Hey, it's me. This is the Paul Leslie Hour, episode number 600. Welcome to it. We have a most interesting guest joining us today. Jimmie Dale Gilmore is here. He is a Texas born artist, a great singer, songwriter, guitarist. He's also an actor. He's not only performed as a solo artist, he's also a member of the iconic group The Flatlanders. And I'll give you all just a little bit of some interesting things dealing with numbers. Number 400 of this show was with Joe Ely. Number 500 was with Butch Hancock. So here we are at number 600 with Jimmie Dale Gilmore, a prolific recording artist as a solo act, but also with Dave Alvin, the Flatlanders. He has been covered by a diverse collection of artists. We could go on, but Nancy Griffith, Diane Shore, Jack Ingram, and I'm just so pleased to welcome you. I'm a big fan.
Well, thank you for having me. It's good to be here.
So I only ask this question because I know somebody like you, based on the songs you write, you're up for it. It's an existential question, so I guess I'm starting off in that world. But who is Jimmie Dale Gilmore?
Well, let's see. That's a very loaded question because, for one thing, because I have one of my other main interests besides music is philosophy, and I've studied a whole lot of in college. In fact, I studied linguistic analysis and symbolic logic.
Ah.
And so going into a question like who is, and also I in the last many years I've studied Buddhism very much in depth, and it very much involves this question of self and non-self.
Mm-hmm.
Who is anybody? So I don't think I can give you a very succinct answer to that.
Well, at the end of the interview, if it comes to you, by all means. So, Jimmie Dale, what has always been the purpose of the art you create?
Well, it took me a very long time to actually sort of realize it consciously, but for many years I have taught a songwriting class once a year at this place called the Omega Institute in upstate New York. And by teaching that class, it's not really teaching. It's like I conduct a workshop. That's a better way to put it. But one of the things about it is that classmate forced me for all these many years to really think about like this question that you just asked and really try to get to the bottom of it. And it eventually, after many years of really trying to tie it up in a little complete package, I finally realized that it was that music is communication, and communication is community. Communing. It's like common experience, and another word for community is love. So that's the whole. When it gets right down to it, that's the real reason for doing music. It's the reason that people like music, because it creates connection between people, and it does it in different ways. Sometimes it sounds like it's doing the opposite, but that's really the overall reason why it exists in the first place, why it has the power it has.
And it does have such a power, such an incredible power.
Yeah.
Now, when you're writing a song, is it something that you have to really, really work at, or is it something that kind of comes more naturally to you?
Generally, it's something I have to work at. It's the ideas come to me fairly easily, and I have stacks of notebooks with little little snippets of things that someday I would like to do. But for the most, there have been a few of my songs that where I've had that experience of it sort of felt like it wrote itself, sort of, like it just came to me. But most of them, it's like if I get an idea and then the idea keeps recurring to me, and if I finally decide that it was a good idea, that it's an idea worth working on, I have to sit down and really do it deliberately. And usually that comes under some kind of a deadline or something, because it's time for some project or for a movie or a new record or something. I'm not prolific like my friends Joe and Butch are, particularly Butch. Butch just writes all the time, and it seems to be effortless. I don't know, but for me, it involves working at it.
Well, you used the word community a little while ago, and I would say that in the community of the show that I do, we have a resident Sinatra expert and aficionado, John Paradise, and he was listening to some of your music, and it's interesting that a Sinatra, because your voice is atypical. It's really beautiful, but I would say it's not the kind of voice you hear every day. And he said, "Now this guy is good," talking about you. And so I'm hoping you can tell us, as a singer, what do you think makes for a great singer? Because there are all kinds of singing voices.
Well, from my perspective, it's that the music that I've listened to all through my life, I never deliberately tried to copy anybody, but I think whatever it was that moved me about, like Hank Williams is the first I can remember of really having an emotional impact on me. And it's strange, because he's writing about stuff that a 5-year-old kid doesn't know anything about, but there was something about his voice and his presentation that affected me deeply. And then that continued through a lot of the country singers and mostly male singers. There were a few female singers that really affected me a lot. Kitty Wells was a big, had a big impact on me. And then later on, Brenda Lee, who was still one of my favorites of all the singers. And then Joan Baez, when Joan Baez came along, and it was the folk thing that made a huge impression on me. But most of the singers that I really, really loved, were it was like Jim Reeves and Marty Robbins, and the really country, and Ernest Tubb. And I was named for Jimmie Rogers. It's why my name is spelled Jimmie, because my dad was a real diehard fan of Jimmie Rogers when he was young. And I didn't really become familiar directly with Jimmie Rogers' music until after I started learning how to play and getting into sort of studying the history of it and everything. I knew a whole lot of Jimmie Rogers music, but it was by other people. There was one record by Lefty Frizzell, and then much later on, I found it's one that Merle Haggard credited with being a huge influence on him. And of course, you can hear Lefty Frizzell in Merle Haggard's singing.
Oh yeah.
But Jimmie Rogers, it turns out, it was really back behind all that. He was the guy that influenced all the people that influenced all the rest of the people. A lot of the young people don't even know about him now, but he was ultra important. But he, anyway, to get back to the question you asked, I was it. I never, as I said, I never copied anybody, but the emotional quality of all these various singers was what would come through to me, and I just sang sort of instinctively. Not It never was studied or anything. I never learned. I didn't learn very much music theory or anything. Later on, I did just because it was interesting to me, but it wasn't what formed my playing. And but it because I've given this so much thought, about what did add up to make me think about songs the way I do, and the way I deliver them. And it's not real conscious. It's not real deliberate, except after the fact. I can listen to it and kind of go, oh, that sounds, that little thing reminds me a little bit of Jerry Lee Lewis, or so. There's different people that influence the way I sing, but I don't think about that while I'm singing.
Interesting.
I don't know if that answers your question or not, but it's that's the.
Yeah, it does, and it brings up something that's been in my mind when I've gone through and listened to all the stuff that you've done, from your solo stuff to the record you made with Dave Alvin. There's a lot of styles. I mean, you've sung Mac the Knife, but you've also sung great bluegrass songs. I've heard you sing blues. You've done rock and roll classics by Lloyd Price. I mean, it's really, you can't put Jimmie Dale Gilmore in any box. But is of all those styles, would you say that there's one that resonates with you the most?
I think probably my greatest discovery when I was learning how to play, and when I was learning how to play and kind of learning about the background to music, like where the music came from that I loved. I think when I discovered the blues, it was like, oh, that's the mother lode. That's where the stuff that hits me the deepest came from. And most of the country music I liked the most was actually really deeply influenced by blues. It's ironic, the whole.
Yeah.
A lot of the country people just dismissed all the black music, but it was actually black music that was kind of the beautiful underpinning of what the best country musicians were doing.
So very true. I mean, you had mentioned Hank Williams earlier, and you can really, really hear him, as he would call it, moaning the blues. It's
Yeah. And the funny part was that, privately, all these people acknowledged their debt to black musicians, but they wouldn't talk about it publicly. It's very strange. And it's kind of a revelation to me when I started finding out that, that Hank, even the Carter family, Hank Williams, Johnny Cash, they had mentors, black musicians that were mentors of theirs that kind of conveyed some of the most power into them.
What songwriters would you say have had the biggest influence on you?
Well, Hank Williams, of course, he stands out immediately, and several of Johnny Cash was just consistently great throughout his whole career. And then, I see your picture of Bob Dylan on the wall there. Bob Dylan he stands out way in front of almost everybody. And I really love Leonard Cohen. I don't know if Leonard Cohen influenced my music, but I love his music, his songwriting and his singing. And right off the top of my head, those are the ones that. Well, there's a bunch of there's so many of them, and in fact, this new record of the Flatlanders is almost a little. There's a little compendium of some of the people that Butch and Joe and I all were really influenced by.
Well, I wanted to. I'm going to just take a glance real quick on my albums here. I might see it here. Well, it's somewhere there, but I was going to ask you about this album. It happens to be one of the albums that I go to the most. And it is your collection of some of the real classics of country music. And it's got Saginaw, Michigan on there. It's got I'll Never Get Out of This World Alive. And, I was talking one time to Lance Cowan, and we were talking about that album in particular. And he was saying, boy, he got it, didn't he? And, oh, and I wanted to tell you also, I'm sorry to name drop, I really am. But I was talking to the great songwriter, Bill Anderson, who wrote Saginaw, Michigan, and he was saying you did a good job with that song. So,
Oh, really?
yeah.
Well, I'm really happy to hear that.
Yeah. But tell us about that collection of the stuff that's sometimes overlooked, I think, but great songs.
Well, that record was done as a tribute to my dad. Who he bequeathed me this early love of country music, and he played guitar himself and was never professionally, but he was real good. He was a real good player, and he played in some dance bands and things around little towns in Texas. But his deep love of that whole style of music was something that imprinted me and stayed with me, no matter what, even when I became a fan of rock and roll and then the folk stuff and everything, all the old classic country stuff stayed with me. And that my dad passed away in 2000, and I really regret that he never got to hear this particular record, because I think he would have loved it. And although I was, when Joe Ely produced it, and when we were doing it several times, I said, golly, this is a mistake for me to try to do, a Marty Robbins song or a Jim Reeves song. Something it invites comparison. And Joe said, well, you got to remember that most of the people that hear this have never heard of those people. Which is strange, which is true, and that's still very odd to me, because they're such an important part of my background. It's peculiar to me that they're unknown to the sort of the world at large.
Well, I have so much enthusiasm for that album. I've told you, I go back to that one again and again. The way you did "Walking the Floor." And it's just, it was like you were meant to sing those songs. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think Ernest Tubb was actually my dad's very favorite singer, and I really loved him too. And Ernest Tubb was one of the ones I didn't know back then that he had early on, along with a bunch of other people, was an imitator of Jimmie Rodgers. I found that out much later. Even Gene Autry, early on, recorded songs that sounded just exactly like Jimmie Rodgers.
Well, what do you think about we mentioned Mac the Knife, but what do you think about the American Songbook, the classic, the standard songs like, Blue Skies and all those kinds of songs?
Well, I think they're wonderful. Of course, it always, to me, always the delivery of the song is equally as important as the song itself. And you know, 2 or 3 years ago, we heard a concert here in Austin by Bob Dylan, and he did Autumn Leaves. And rather than his typical Bob Dylan style of just mangling it, how he does with everything, with his own songs but he did Autumn Leaves just kind of really straightforward. And it was one of the prettiest things I've ever heard. There's something about the intensity of his delivery and the beauty of that song. It was just overwhelming. And I heard later on somebody asking him something. I don't remember the exact question. It was something like, "Why do you do these? Why are you covering these songs?" And Bob Dylan said something like, I'm uncovering them." And I thought that was genius. I thought that was brilliant. And so, there's a lot of those sort of Tin Pan Alley sort of things. There's lots of works of genius in that whole catalog. Not all of it. I mean, lots of it just strikes me as really schlocky, and glib and silly, but a lot of it is just profound and beautiful.
Absolutely. Well, when you're recording something, because as I said, there's just you've written some great songs, but also you can really pick them. And I was listening to "Goodbye Old Missoula" that you cut, and that's a Willis Allen Ramsey song.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, because you've got such a great variety of things that you recorded, how do you pick something that makes you say, you know what, I need to put the Jimmie Dale Gilmore stamp on this one?
I don't know, because I don't think of it from that angle. The only angle I think of it from is if a song just grabs me emotionally, then I can't even learn a song unless I just love it. So, and I've always, I think of myself more as a singer and as an interpreter than as a writer. But it's more like it comes from a place of just having a really intense kind of feeling about whatever song it is. And as I said, I can't even perform a song. I can't learn it if I don't have a real strong feeling about it.
Do you know the writer of that song, Willis Allen Ramsey?
Yeah, we've hung out a little bit over the years, not a whole lot, but I got to know him through. I think it's through Champ Hood, who was one of the members of Uncle Walt's band, and I don't know if you're familiar with that, but if you're not, you should be.
They're great, yeah.
Yeah,
great recordings.
And Walter Hyatt and Champ Hood and David Ball, and they were friends of Willis, and so I had been a fan of his from way back to the early Flatlanders days, and I finally met him here in Austin, and we hung out some when he was around here some. I haven't seen him in quite a long time, but he is definitely one of the best. One of the both his singing and his songwriting were just amazing.
Oh yeah. What would you say makes a good song a good song?
Boy, that's an ongoing mystery. But it's got something to do with that. Like it goes back to the communication thing. If there's something in a song that the listener relates to and goes, yeah, and this isn't a conscious thing. Nobody thinks, but they don't go listen to a song and say, do I relate to this? But just the feeling comes of a connection with the singer or the writer. that that's the fun of it. That's what makes it like, wow, here's another person that sort of understands the way I feel.
One of the other things about you is that you have been able to sing with a lot of really great singers. Share the stage with a lot of great singers. And, like you sang with Willie Nelson, for example. Was there somebody that you had the chance to sing with that really in particular knocked you out?
Well, gosh, you mean in terms of musical performance or of being starstruck?
Maybe a little of both.
I had a really funny experience of I was invited to play a tribute show to by the Glenn Gould Foundation up in Toronto a few years back, and the tribute was to Leonard Cohen, and Leonard Cohen was actually there in the audience, and so we didn't sing together, but I performed one of his songs in front of him, and I think that was one of the most daunting things that I've experienced, and the funny part was I made a mistake in the song. And it was really funny because I had this, it was The Tower of Song. I don't know if you know that song, but it's just an amazing, wonderful song.
Oh yeah.
And in one place in it, one line in it says, he says, I'm standing by the window where the light is strong, which is such a beautiful line. But for some reason, when I came past that, when I had done this song hundreds of times, preparing for it, when I came to that, I said, I'm standing by the window where the air is strong. And I didn't do it deliberately. It was like, it was just a mistake. And it was sort of, I felt like, well, I told him later after the show backstage, I was apologizing to him. I said, I can't believe, I don't know. That wasn't intentional. I don't know how that happened. I'm so sorry. And he said, well, I kind of actually like that better. I don't know if he really meant it or if he was just being, the gentleman that he was. He's a really sweet, amazing guy.
Wow. That's cool. Is there someone that you would like to sing with that you haven't yet?
Well, I really, I didn't get to sing, to do as much with Willie as I would have liked to all through the years. So we've been friends for a long time, but I don't know him real well. We haven't been real close friends. We live kind of close to each other, but that's something that I kind of feel like I missed out on a little bit. I also, I toured. I did one season. I toured with Bob Dylan. I opened for Bob Dylan one season, and then another year I opened. This is back in the days when I really was playing a lot. I toured with John Prine, and actually John and I became pretty close friends. And we were, the last time I saw him was at the Hardly Strictly Bluegrass Festival, like what, 3 years ago. 3, 4, golly, last year vanished, so, but, and we had talked about, John said that he wanted to do some recording with me. Well, then of course, his health was failing anyway, and then he got COVID and we lost him. So that's a big, huge regret I have that didn't transpire. John Prine was one of my favorites in the world, both as a person and as a musician.
What would you say John Prine was like at his core?
He was a deeply loving person with with real the sentiments he expressed in his, he had that sly, dark sense of humor, but underneath it was a real respect for humankind. He was a pretty amazing person.
Hmm.
And he was one of the people that, the way he came over in his music, to me, was the way he was in real life, to me.
Hmm. Well, that's wonderful. There was a journalist. I'm trying to remember this guy's name. I'm sorry to whoever he is, but he was telling me that he was hanging out with John Prine, interviewing him, and he said that John Prine was looking through the newspaper, and he said they reviewed my album. There's a review of it, and he was just tickled. And it was like, yeah, well, you are John Prine. Are you know?
Right.
I thought that was touching. Um, you know, uh, I was walking with a friend of mine yesterday, and he was asking me what's going on with the show. Who's coming up? And I said, well, we're taping episode 600 tomorrow with Jimmie Dale Gilmore. And I started telling him who you were. He wasn't familiar. And maybe you're tired of hearing this, but of course, what finally got the bell to go off was I said, have you seen The Big Lebowski? He said, of course. And I told him which character you played, and he repeated verbatim the 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 dialogues with you, like word for word. And I've interviewed a few people. One of the interesting things about The Big Lebowski, aside from being one of my favorite movies, the amount of musical talent on that appears. Jeff Bridges is a great singer-songwriter.
Yeah.
Peter Stormare, who's been on this show also, and John Goodman has a big musical side. Amy Mann. With all of the musical talent that was in that movie, was there any? Did you all talk about music at all, or anything like that?
Oh yeah, we Jeff and I and John and I sat around and played a little bit together, back in the trailers and the off times, and they're both very, very good musicians, and they're strangely kind of from the same, I don't know, musical background as mine. We're sort of I always said I never have been a really good guitar player. I always made sure to surround myself with musicians that were better than me. And I felt with both John and Jeff, we felt like we were among equals, I think. Where that was a thing, sitting and playing an acoustic guitar just in a little bitty room is kind of where it all started from. And that was a very amazing time for me. I feel extremely fortunate to have been part of that whole thing. And that movie just keeps on.
What did you think of The Big Lebowski the first time you saw the film, beginning to end?
Well, I liked it a lot, and I was, at the time, I think all of us thought it was going to be a huge hit, and then it wasn't right off the bat, which is it's still mysterious to me that it was why did it in a way sort of disappear and then just slowly bubble up as one of the most popular movies in the world? It's a very odd story to the history of that movie.
Oh yeah.
And it's funny. I know so many people that have watched it many times, and it doesn't get old.
No.
But it's kind of funny. I can't put my finger on what it is that's so genius about it. But those Joel and Ethan and that whole crew, they just really, I don't know, that they've got something real going in
Oh,
their
yeah.
whole approach to all of it.
You know, it's interesting because I was just thinking, it just occurred to me when we had Joe Ely on, that was at the very, very beginning when a lot of people didn't know what the word pandemic meant. I mean, at the beginning of all this stuff that's going on. And then we got to episode 500. We had Butch Hancock, and we were kind of like right in the middle of it. And now, God willing, we're kind of hopefully at the end, and it just so happens you're the guest. It's I'm hoping you can tell us because I had so much fun interviewing all of you. What do these guys mean to you, Joe and Butch?
Well, there's such a deeply integral part of my whole life, that it's hard to express. They really very much are like brothers to me. They're as close to me as my own brother, and they've both as artists and as friends, they've influenced me throughout my professional career.
What is the best thing about being Jimmie Dale Gilmore?
Well, I guess maybe just existence itself. I don't know. it's I used to like I went through these phases of asking my friends I'll ask you right now, what's your favorite thing about infinity? And I had
Being a part of it?
I asked one friend what that one time, and then he thought a second, and then he said, "Well, I could just go on and on." Later on, he told me that he hadn't actually meant that as a clever reply. It didn't dawn on him till after he said it, how kind of silly it was, but appropriate. But it's like, like somebody asked me one time, how did my spiritual life affect my music? And I said, I thought about it a while, and finally I said, well, that to me, that's a little bit like asking, how does oxygen affect you? Like, it doesn't exactly affect you. It's like absolute, it's a total absolute requirement.
Well, tell us about Janet.
Wow, that's a lot to tell. Janet is my wife of 36 years almost, coming up on, and we've been together longer than that. And I was married twice before, and my kids were from the other marriages, but Janet has been their mother. We're all close friends. The family has been tight knit all through all the years and all the turbulence and everything. And Janet in lots of ways has been the anchor point of kind of keeping this whole big family together. It would be very difficult for me to express what Janet is to me. More than important. She's absolutely essential.
Well put. On my computer, when her emails came through, it shows up as Janet Planet.
Yeah, that's her email, her little email handle, and her phone. That's what shows up on my phone when she calls me.
Well, I always like to end on a kind of an open-ended note. And something that I've noticed about my interviews is that a lot of times I'll do something and I think, gosh, that was from 12 years ago, or that was from 13 years ago. And I'll get an email from someone and they're just now hearing it. So you just don't know when someone is going to watch this or listen to it. But if anybody out there in the world is drifting in and they happen to be experiencing this interview, whether the video or the audio version, what would you, the special guest, Jimmie Dale Gilmore, what would you say to that pilgrim who's drifting in?
Wow, I guess I would just try to give some advice that I would like to take my own self, which is keep an open mind and keep open ears. And I always like to sign off with, take care of yourself and everybody else.
I like that. I like that a lot. Well, everybody out there, if you want to find out more about Jimmie Dale Gilmore, it's JimmieDaleGilmore.com. And Jimmy is spelled like Jimmy Rogers, Jimmie. And I'm really honored to have interviewed you. It's been a long time that I've thought it would be great to have him on sometime. And you have absolutely made me smile. So thank you, Jimmie Dale.
Well, thank you. The feeling is mutual. I've really enjoyed it, Paul. And I hope we talk again in the future.
I hope so too. Keep me apprised, and I'm always happy to promote something or just talk.
All right.
All right, sir. Until next time.